Shannon is arriving into the green room. Maya, can you go a hair to your left?
The 2020 election is in the can, and Republicans are doing their best to suppress the 2022 vote in 47 states.
Did you know that this purity at the ballot box justification was also used during the Jim Crow era?
An update from the Lone Star State, plus gerrymandering, the GQP, and why it's crucial for women to rule the world, or at least run for office. And we're taking the American flag back from the Q Crew this Memorial Day weekend. We're Speaking starts right now. The 2020
Lisa Senecal, your co-host. I'm so excited to be back with all of you tonight, to finally be back with all of you tonight. And I am here with one of my very favorite people on the planet, co-host Maya May.
Hey everyone, hey Lisa. You are also one of my favorite people on the planet. Ever since we started doing the show together, it allowed me to connect and engage with politics on a deeper level. Coming from the comedy world, I think I was like, oh, politics is real sad. And that's what it is. And, you know, I think it's great that we are figuring out how to work together to meet America where it's at. And so been thinking a lot about our mission, our renewed mission to help people think critically using humor to do so.
Yeah, We're Speaking's mission is, we're really here to try to uplift diverse voices, offer a platform, and seek positive, actionable solutions to problems through thoughtful conversation, like actually listening to other people and giving them an opportunity to speak and really hear what they're saying. Go figure. And obviously we like to use some humor, and part of the mission is definitely to kick the living shit out of Trumpism and save the democracy.
Yeah, saving the democracy is the key phrase here because it is kind of dire straits. We have a lot of stuff that we're doing that is new. What's some of the stuff that we're doing that's new in this re-upping of the season?
Yeah, we had a really good time during our break, amusing ourselves in meetings and coming up with some new ideas. So we're really excited to be able to share them with you guys soon. We know that the GOP does not seem to live on the same planet that the rest of us do anymore. So we've got a new bit that we'll be doing called Planet GOP. So we're going to be making some trips there. Maya and I will be flying the spacecraft.
Yes,
we're going to do more audience engagement, because that's really important, to hear your voices and find ways to bring you into the show. And then, as I said before, we want to give you a lot of really straightforward ways that you can get involved with the Lincoln Project movement, which is the movement to save our democracy.
Yeah, it's super important that y'all get engaged. And of course, we are going to have some of our crowd favorites, like the Offs Awards, because that is something that the GOP just won't quit with being crazy. And so we need to give them an award for it. But first, let's take a trip to a big old tower of lies. I think we're going to take a trip to the city with our tour guide, Lisa, to Trump Tower, Mendacity.
We are. We know Donald Trump might not have gotten the Trump Tower Moscow that he was hoping for, but he did build Trump Tower Mendacity, and it just keeps adding more stories. It's where the construction is shoddy, the residents are shady, and the vendors never get paid. Just an unstable tower of lies, not unlike its namesake, where the GOP members of Congress go to flush their decency and integrity down a fool's gold toilet. Today at Trump Tower Mendacity, the focus is on propping up the big lie and covering up the GOP's complicity in January 6th. And yes, they are complicit. Let's look at January 6th and the big lie by the numbers. 53%. That's the percentage of Republicans who believe Trump won the election and it was stolen from him. 90. That's the number of state and federal judges, including Trump-appointed judges, who ruled against challenges to the validity of the 2020 election. 47%. That's how many Republicans think that it would be better to just change voting laws in states rather than actually trying to win over voters with policy and ideas. We'll just find ways to disenfranchise them through new laws. 408, 47, and 25. That's the number of bills across 47 states that would disenfranchise millions of Black voters, and 25 have already been signed into law. 140. That's the number of police officers who were injured defending Congress and the Capitol on January 6th. And 5, that's the number of people who died as a result of January 6th, because now holding on to power means more to the GOP and Trump than American lives or our democracy. And here's the final number of the night, 2022, because that is the ball game, folks. 2020 was not the end of fighting to save our democracy. It was only the beginning. And it's a fight that we can only win if you're in it with us. So that's this week's visit to Trump Tower Mendacity.
Trump Tower Mendacity. No actual people, just lies, full of lies. Before we hop into our OFFS awards, I'd love to hear, what was the inspiration behind Trump Tower Mendacity?
How did we come up with this one? You and I were knocking around ideas, and I do have to give a nod to Rick, because Rick Wilson used to refer to Kayleigh McEnany as Kayleigh Mendacity. So the word has stuck in my head. Like, unfortunately, Kayleigh McEnany also has. I'd like to find the flashy thing to erase that portion. So yeah, Mendacity was there, and Trump's obsession with building towers, and he certainly has built that tower of lies over the past 5 years.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of bad actors lately who have been building on these lies. Yeah. One of them, I saw a tweet about it. We tweeted about it. JD Vance. That was, yeah. What was that all about?
Yeah, he's really unbelievable. JD Vance, who some people probably know as the author of what I thought was a really mediocre book, Hillbilly Elegy, that was made into a really bad movie. Well, he's now switched from doing that and from making a lot of money before he became an author to running for the US Senate from Ohio. And I swear he might be one of the only people on the planet who can make me miss Rob Portman. But if he wins, I'm actually going to feel that way. And yeah, he's another Republican who doesn't think that to run for Congress, you need to believe in our democracy or our free market system.
Wait, what do you mean by that? Stop for a second, because that's an important point.
Yeah, he spoke at this organization called the Claremont Institute, had a woke capital conference. And by the way, the Claremont Institute's mission is fighting woke doctrines.
Like they're taking it so far, like woke capital. I'm like, is that like an investment firm? Like who is coming up with their phrasing? And I think we have a clip of his.
If you are fighting the American nation state, if you are fighting the values and virtues that make this country great, the conservative movement should be about nothing if not reducing your power and, if necessary, destroying you.
Destroying you. Wow.
I know.
He's setting the detonator. He's like, let's set the sights on America. Destroy.
Apparently now, right. One of the major political parties in our country now has people who are on a mission to destroy their opponents, which, my God, that does not sound like America to me. And the dog whistles that, like, I have to share this one with you, because that thing that he said about an American nation state, that it's an odd term. And it seemed like it could not be just sort of happenstance that he decided to use that term. So I looked it up last night, and the definition is a sovereign state whose citizens or subjects are relatively homogeneous in factors such as language and common descent.
Oh, wow.
The great American melting pot, right?
They don't want diversity and inclusion. They want homogeneity and exclusion. That is their plan, which is crazy. Like, you can't, unless they're building a time machine and trying to dial things all the way back, it's just not going to happen. So it's a weird strategy for me. I hope we get a chance to come back to JD at the end of the show, because we have a lot to say about that. But we do want to move on. Talk about, we all have people in our lives who never cease to surprise us, people that we hold out hope that they'll change, but time and time again, they do something insane, batshit crazy that confirms they never will. And then you shout, oh, for fuck's sake. That's how we feel about the GOP. They won't change. So each week, we honor their effort with our Oh for Fuck's Sake award, and you get to vote to decide the winner. And our first nominee this week was Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, aka the Turtle. I might do my turtle impersonation later. We'll see. I do a great turtle. McConnell and his pal Josh Holmes might be laughing at Trump's failed wedding singer appearances. We all were. But McConnell knows he's in the fight of his life for who is the ultimate owner of the party, Donald or the McConnell.
Yeah, it's going to be a fight to the death, I think. And I think McConnell doesn't quite understand. Yeah, he does not have the stranglehold on the party that he once did. And Donald Trump has not gone anywhere. So we are, however, going to take a quick break. But, when we come back, we have a guest. She took on the tough and horrible task of trying to beat Jim Jordan for his congressional seat in Ohio. And we're going to speak with her and offer our condolences that she had to think about Jim Jordan as much as she had to. Yeah, so Shannon Freshower is joining us in a few minutes to talk about gerrymandering, Jim Jordan, and why women need to keep pushing to get into office. Yeah, we're going to take a quick break.
Republicans are afraid that Americans will discover the truth of their role in insurrection. That when police barriers were breached and the Capitol was stormed, Republicans hadn't lost control. In fact, everything was going according to plan. Plans that were hatched at all levels of the Republican Party. From low-level staffers to GOP organizations, all the way up to sitting members of Congress.
It's just simply false narrative.
They knew.
We will march to the Capitol.
They weren't unwitting allies. These were co-conspirators.
Holy cow.
Republicans spent years spreading misinformation, peddling false conspiracy theories. But there was one evil plot they are desperate to cover up. One conspiracy that's true. January 6th was an inside job.
And we are back. Really excited about our next guest tonight. She is in Ohio, where she had to fight in the Duck District. We're gonna call it. It's called the Duck District for a reason. I'm so excited to bring her to the show tonight because I have to find out exactly how she is keeping up the good fight there. And so, please welcome to We're Speaking our first guest of the night, Shannon Freshower. Hey, Shannon, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for being here.
Yes. So, the Duck District. You ran in a gerrymander. I like to say it's like duck, duck, what the fuck, like duck, duck, goose.
No, it is. It's insane. It was literally voted it was ruled at the Court of Appeals level, the Federal Court of Appeals level, is unconstitutional. And then several weeks later, the Supreme Court decided that they didn't care that districts were partisanly gerrymandered. So there was a couple weeks that the district was going to look different, and then it just went away. But I do have to tell you something about the whole J.D. Vance thing. He's not the craziest racist running in the Republican primary in Ohio for the Senate.
Uh-oh, do tell. We need to know.
There's a guy named Josh Mandel who's insane, who's legitimately crazy. He's basically an avowed white nationalist, only he likes to pretend like he's culturally Jewish. He's, his religion is Judaism, but he's basically a full-fledged white nationalist. He's insane.
And does he have a following?
Oh yeah.
Of course he does.
He and the former chair of the state Republican Party are fighting for Trump's nomination, and for Trump's endorsement, and he's probably going to get it. Yeah, wow. He's crazy. And
well, that leads us into another thing we wanted to talk about with gerrymandering. So one of the things that it's done is lead to crazier and crazier candidates, as you are so well describing. So can you explain to the LP viewers why it ends up creating crazy candidates?
Basically what happens is, in a normal district, and how we've always had it, Merlin, sorry, I've got dogs. They were all sound asleep about 2 seconds ago.
We have dogs too. It's all good.
So what happens is, there used to be a way that you would have to move to either the extreme to win the primary, but then you had to move back to the general to win the general, right, because you've got to elect a broad swath of people. With gerrymandering, you don't do that. So there's no worry about having to go back to the center to pull back, crazy or non-crazy sane people. So you just have to go more and more and more and more extreme. And we're at the point where, if you look at the House caucus, Jim Jordan is kind of like in the middle of the road. He's no longer like the extreme end of the crazy. It is terrifying, but it's reality. If you put him with Marjorie Taylor Greene, he looks sane. He's still fighting against Hillary and Mueller and things like that. He hasn't moved on to Jewish space lasers yet.
True.
But that's where we are in the Republican Party.
I was going to say, I can't believe that is where we are, and it is in fact where we are. And it feels like it's an uphill battle for you there. What made you decide to run in the first place?
Because I don't believe anyone gets a free shot at Congress, and I don't care that John Boehner wanted 12 Republican seats and 4 Democratic seats out of Ohio when he redistricted. He basically controlled our redistricting illegally in 2012, and there's emails, and it's a whole other thing. But that pissed off Ohioans so much that they put out a constitutional amendment and got it passed to change the redistricting process. And so, they were done. Ohioans were absolutely done. They've basically made it so that the minority party has to have a vote. Minority legislators, 30% of the minority party, has to approve the plan. And so, that's how bad it was. We've got a district that's like 20 miles wide and 100 miles long called The Snake on the Lake.
Oh, so many different animals.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Oh, that's the duck.
have to respect. You kind of have to respect the maniacal genius of how horrible that they did this. I think it was a state Senate seat where they inadvertently, when they were doing all of this, they let the state senator out of his own district. So they just cut his house into the district that they wanted him in.
Oh my God.
And everyone else in his street is not. It's phenomenal. Like, there are streets where like one side of the street is one district, the other side of the street is the other district. It's insane. It's insane.
It is insane. So let's talk about Jim Jordan.
Okay.
If Republicans take the House in midterms, there will be a new speaker and McCarthy's weak. What do you think about the chance of Jordan trying to become Speaker of the House?
I think he thinks he can do it. He's putting out a new book in November just in time for either running for governor, which is what he'd been talking about doing for a while, which means that he would primary the sitting governor. Or even if McCarthy stays and he can just control McCarthy from behind the scenes, he's still going to be chair of the Judiciary Committee, a guy who went to law school and didn't pass the bar. He says he didn't take it. I've heard both sets of stories, but he's not a lawyer. Like, he's not a lawyer. He is not licensed to practice law and has never been. But he can be chair of the Judiciary Committee.
The sports coat only comes if you pass the bar, and that's why he's never decided to purchase one and wear one.
Honestly, I would take him voting for like COVID relief for the district and tell him he never has to wear a sports coat ever again. If he would just do anything for the district. And he doesn't. He actively works against us. It's mind-boggling.
There's so much of that happening now. And they also, I can't tell if the Republicans at this point are doing what's in their own worst interest intentionally, or if they're just managing to do this without trying. But what just happened with Liz Cheney and Elise Stefanik. Elise Stefanik's one of my pet. She used to be a normal person, and the fact that she was, and now she has completely sold out, makes her so much worse than people who were just like legit disgusting to begin with, because she knows better. So what is it at this point that appeals, that the Republican Party is doing to even try to appeal to suburban women? Because I don't think the Elise Stefaniks really do.
Well, I have a theory that the dumbest thing the Republicans in the House caucus ever did was if they're trying to win back suburban women, what you don't do is replace the hardworking older woman who had been there doing the job competently with the younger, subjectively hotter model who's incompetent. Because that's like every suburban housewife mom's greatest fear, that the trophy wife is coming, and she's going to take your spot. And that's exactly what they did. And you're right, Stefanik knows better, but McCarthy knows better. He just doesn't care.
Right.
They are so obsessed with power. It's the old, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And they are desperately trying to figure out how to get absolute power. But Stefanik doesn't know better. Kylie McEnany went to Georgetown's, School of Foreign Service, right. Oxford, and Harvard Law School. She knows better too. And you look at all of these elite, the elite of the elite are the Republican Party telling everyone not to be elitist.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that they do that, and they seem to keep getting away with it too. Like so many Ivy League people trying to point to somehow their farm roots. Another tactic they do that you'd mentioned before is the GOP putting up women who don't like women. They
don't. I really firmly believe that when we look back on 2020. When, real political scientists actually sort of look at it and they start looking at races and trends, they're going to see that this was a race that was this was a year that was a backlash against women gaining power. If you look at women who ran, not me, I knew I wasn't going to win. I understood what my role was. And that was, and I would tell people this, I don't I don't know I can beat him. There's like a sliver of a chance, obviously, because, lightning in a bottle kind of thing. But I can beat up on him and I can make him spend his money focused on me. And I was fine with that as an option. But there were really, really good candidates. We had a ton of really good women in Ohio running as Democrats, and they all lost. And they lost to horrible dudes who were incompetent.
4 minutes left, ladies. 4 minutes
left.
But
they were incompetent incumbents, basically. And then we lost, in the House, we lost some really good women.
Right. And
what the Republicans did is they're like, well, we made real gains in Congress with women. Yeah, but you ran against women who hate women. Women who are against, women having access to abortion or having access to birth control, to childcare, to anything that makes a woman's life easier, a mother's life easier. None of them are dealing with, we have all these people who are supposedly pro-life, but none of them are dealing with the fact that the maternal and child mortality rates are skyrocketing, especially among African-American women. Yep. I mean, in Ohio, it's horrifyingly large. I think it's something like 3 to 4 times as likely for a Black woman to die during either childbirth or in the first year. And 3 to 4 times as likely that her child will. But, the people who are pro-life aren't dealing with that. And if you're pro-life, that should be the first thing that you want, because you're supposedly arguing that you want healthy babies. I want as many healthy babies born as possible. And I want them born into good environments where they can thrive, which means that you give them health care and you give them an education and you give them housing and you give them food, because that's what being a human is about. That's what, and as a Christian and as a Catholic, that's what that's about. And you don't get to exploit and perverse a faith just because you think it gains you power. But that's what they've been doing for decades. Mm-hmm. I mean, what they've done to faith is horrifying.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I think
it's been so. You go.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, yeah, but the co-opting of all that is good has been something that has been pervasive with the GOP. And so that is something that we are consistently going to be calling out. As things move, what is this doing to the electoral landscape, I guess, is my question. When you have people who,
we're not going to know that until we look at the new voting laws. I mean, the fact that, we've got a guy who stood before the United States Supreme Court and argued that people's rights to vote should be restricted because Republicans can't win without it. That was his argument to the Supreme Court. And he very likely, given this court, will win.
Yeah, the degree to which people are saying, the quiet parts out loud now, and it's not a problem when they do. Yeah. I mean, it would be different if when that happened, like you compare the Holocaust to wearing a face mask, that the wrath of God came down on you from people in your own party. And that just doesn't happen anymore. People just get away with it. And there are an awful lot of people in the base who are cheering it on.
I mean,
people
they
proud.
gave her a ton of money for it.
Right.
There have been racists in Ohio. We've got one of the largest KKK populations and have for decades.
Yay.
Yeah, it's great. Good times. There's a reason that our electorate looks like it does.
Yeah.
So, speaking of that, in the fight for democracy, why should the focus be on the state legislature and who we're electing there in that focus?
Because everything that happens in your life basically happens at the state ledge level. In Ohio today, there were hearings, just to use it as an example. They were fighting against, forcing COVID vaccine, passports and all of that. They've decided that they are going to try and ban all vaccine requirements, including polio, MMR, meningitis. They're not going to allow schools or colleges or anyone that's the bill on the floor right now. I mean, it's going to kill people. It's literally going to kill people, and they don't care because all they want to do is win. The tribal mentality has so rotted brains that they've lost sight of thinking straight. When 500,000 people died and they didn't care. I mean, that was pretty much the end of it.
Yeah. And to be so proud that on Trump's watch, the vaccines were developed and still be willing to turn around and tell people that they shouldn't be taking them, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But somehow in the, twisted, bizarro world that the Republican Party is living in, that makes sense now. I appreciate so much, Shannon, your focus on what we need to be paying attention to on the local level, because we do try to really give people through the show opportunities to understand what it is they can be doing right now to change the outcome of the 2022 election. You have any final advice for the folks watching?
The most important thing you could do right now is find out what your state's redistricting plans are. Every congressional district, every state legislative district in the country almost is being redrawn right now and will be for the next several months to the next year. Contact either look for redistricting efforts, contact the League of Women Voters, if you're a Democrat, contact the state Democratic caucuses for your legislatures, and find out how you can help make fair lines and get fair elections, because voters have the right to pick their elected leaders. Elected leaders don't have the right to pick their voters. And I know it's a cliche at this point, but we need to keep saying it over and over again until it becomes reality again.
Yeah, louder for the people in the back.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for putting yourself out there and your voice out there. So we do want to reiterate the really important calls to action that we hear during the show from some of the guests that come on. So the things that you can do, staying informed is just one part of the equation, but you got to act on it. So in just 15 minutes a week, you can be a really active part of saving our democracy. As Shannon was saying, get involved with local politics, with your state legislatures in particular. Find an organization. She mentioned the League of Women Voters. They're a nonpartisan organization. They're really phenomenal. They empower voters. They're working to defend the democracy. You can go to the link. They're at lwv.org. We really do encourage you to please take some action steps. It doesn't take much time, but if we're all doing it, it's going to make a huge, huge difference when the midterms come around.
Yes, huge difference. Please get involved. And up next, Texas is the state that keeps on giving and also taking away, especially when it comes to the ballot box.
Yeah, new voting restrictions are in the works that could make it much harder for some voters. And of course, when we say some voters, we're talking about Black and brown voters, because that is who the GOP is targeting.
So coming up, we will talk to the founder of Polychick, Christina Sanders. The group is working hard to raise awareness and fight back. But first, it's time to introduce our second nominee for this week's OFF Awards.
Yeah. Back like a bad smell, it's Donald Trump. Look, we all wish that Trump and Trumpism were gone, but referring to Trump as the former guy, it really only makes him more dangerous. He is not the former guy when it comes to the GOP, as Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene told us and keep telling us during Gaetz's pre-arrest tour of the U.S., coming to Georgia. Get your tickets. You don't actually need to attend. Trump is still very much the bloated orange head of the GOP. He might be out of the White House, but he is far from forgotten. Like, for example, he's really getting some love right now from a New York grand jury that's looking into his businesses. And Donald, have you been bad? Or should we ask if you have ever been good? Fortunately, Donald has distractions to keep him from obsessing about the possibility of being indicted, like the potential release of Bill Barr's tips on how to shift blame away from Donald Russia memo, or trying to keep the January 6th Commission from being formed to investigate the insurrection that he and many members of the GOP incited. So yeah, that's our second nominee.
We're not going to forget that. He wants us to. Maybe that's why all this other stuff is coming up, and all of I feel like he's like distract. Coming up next, we'll be back with you, but we're going to go to a quick break with an ad from the Lincoln Project.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
And to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for Trump.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
If you are fighting the American nation state, if you are fighting the values and virtues that make this country great, the conservative movement should be about nothing if not reducing your power and, if necessary, destroying you.
Are you certain that none of your members were in any communication with any of the people who stormed Capitol Hill?
Thank you for the question. Everybody have a nice day.
We can look back in a time in history where people were told to wear a gold star, and they were definitely treated like second-class citizens, so much so that they were put in trains and taken to gas chambers in Nazi Germany. And this is exactly the type of abuse that Nancy Pelosi is talking about.
Have a nice day.
When they do their satanic rituals, they have to wear a mask and they have to stand 6 feet apart. Sound familiar?
Everybody have a nice day.
Check the record. Do your research.
Welcome back to We're Speaking. Tonight, we're touching on a bunch of different really pressing issues, including how important it is to get and stay involved in your state politics, just as we were talking about with Shannon.
Yeah, it's easy to check out. We know that, but we also know that if you aren't looking, it's easy for lines to get redrawn, and it becomes difficult to be a part of the democratic process.
Yeah, so our next guest, Christina Sanders, is the founder and director of the nonpartisan Politic Engagement Fund, and she really defines what it is to be civically engaged. Her overarching mission: to inspire Texas women to make democracy work in their communities and states by getting involved on the hyper-local level. Her mission at the moment, though, is to stop the Texas legislature in its tracks before it further disenfranchises people of color. We are so pleased tonight to have Christina with us, I hope. There you are, Christina.
Hey,
welcome
Christina.
to the show. We're so glad to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we have so much we want to talk about, so I'm going to bypass the chit chat and just get right to it, because you've got bills that are in conference committee that are getting way too close to ending up on the governor's desk. Governor Abbott said, I believe it was today, that he can't wait to get his hands on whatever it is that's passed. He doesn't even seem to really care what the details are going to be because he's going to sign it. And this is despite the fact that after the 2020 election, he was literally bragging about how secure and fair the 2020 election had been. And now he's out publicly saying that mail-in voting is just replete with fraud. So we know he's not telling the truth. So what is this really all about? And what do you expect to be in the bill?
Well, I mean, I'll say this. Texas is one of the hardest places to vote. It's probably, after this piece of legislation, going to be the hardest place to vote. I think we shared with a few states this title, ranking 50 out of 50 in terms of being negligent to democracy and the democratic process. This bill, SB 7, I mean, and you're right, I think it's so important to note that the governor was one of the first states to jump out front and say all of the elections in Texas went well and there were no problems. Close everything, stop the counts, stop whatever's happening. We're good. But now all of a sudden there is this made up urgency, which I think is more so voter fraud in and of itself from the legislature, to disenfranchise voters who, for no reason except for want to use the different systems and mediums that are available to everybody, or many states, most states in the country, like mail-in voting, and to make it more difficult for those individuals to vote. And so SB 7 is right now in conference committee. It is not urgent. It is not an emergency. It is not a necessity. It is a bill that creates a problem. We do not have problem solvers in Austin. We obviously have people who are starting fires and not doing the job that Texans and Americans need for moving democracy forward and making sure elections are fair and free. And so that's what SB 1070 is. SB 1070 is something that many groups, we are really just educating women about, making their voices heard and making sure their representatives are on the right side of history, because this is historical. I don't know if it's clicking, because I know we've been through a lot and we're going through a lot, the pandemic, just everything that's happening with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. We're having a transition as a nation. But the very core of what's going to be able to hold us together or push us apart and allow us to crumble will be voting, will be democracy. And every single session, the legislature, led by Greg Abbott, led by individuals like Greg Abbott, they're chiseling away at the core of what it is that we could even be able to stand on. There's nothing to stand on if there is no democratic process. And I think it's fundamental that we make sure we protect it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And that, creating problems and then solving those problems is signature GOP moves. And a part of the bill sounds like it's going to create even more problems. Is there a provision in there for poll watching, untrained poll watchers at a time when now you can have a gun that's unlicensed? Can you talk about that?
It's definitely easier to get a gun than it is to find out how to register to vote and actually be able to do it in the state. And if you don't believe me, go online and try to figure it out. It's very, very difficult in Texas just to register and vote. But yeah, there's several provisions that should make everybody uncomfortable. For one, when we had amazing people, statespeople, who worked very hard to expand elections and to give more people access to elections during a pandemic in Harris County, in Dallas County, where it's already very difficult to service such large metroplexes on limited resources, almost no resources from the state of Texas. We see that this bill is really targeted at rolling back most all of those provisions, including, not just the vote by mail, those who are eligible, sending them a ballot, but also the drive-through voting. That could possibly be something that won't be included in the future. If the Senate committee decides that they'd like to include that and send that to Greg Abbott, it's something that could be taken away. I'm not sure how restaurants haven't figured out that drive-through is not safe as going inside of a restaurant. But obviously, Texas has some information we don't know about it not being a good way to be able to vote.
Well, and drive-through voting, that's kind of important. Can you talk about why it's so
especially
important?
For women?
Yeah,
especially for women. Women are typically the caregivers for families, and many women in our organizations that we worked with were, first of all, afraid of taking their children because they had concerns about COVID and standing in line and just the whole process. But if you have two children, one child on your lunch break, it's much easier for you to drive through voting, scarf down your lunch, and then vote and go back to work. or to go before your kids are in school or go after they're out of school. If you have a toddler or if you're caregiving for a parent or an aunt, it's much easier to drive through voting. There was nothing wrong with it, according to the governor himself. It should be something that we should keep, but also there's something in this bill that would make it more difficult. And I haven't forgotten about the poll watchers, but that would make it more difficult for disabled persons. You'd have to prove your disability, which, I mean, I'm not sure what this contingent of legislators, where they come from. It must be, some demand from the gods above for all of us to get involved and reinvent how we want to collectively approach democracy, because this is terrible. It goes against so many laws. You want people to prove their disability in order to be able to get a ballot of their choice or to vote how they want to. And then on top of this, I don't know if y'all remember the poll watchers that were, videotaping people, standing over people. What this bill could do, what this bill could do is allow individuals who are not officials that are sanctioned by the county or even by the parties be workers or people who can challenge voters or take videos of voters while they're trying to cast their ballot. And I don't know if you have read any stories about the history. Now, this is a big dog whistle, because the history of when women first started to vote, when Latinos were voting in the Valley, when Blacks and African Americans first gained their right to vote, that intimidation at the polls was a big factor for people to be like, look, I just don't want the problems. I do want to vote. I do want to be a part of the process, but it always, and it can and it will lead to problems. And last summer should show us that where we are as a nation is not where we were as a nation. And we will have problems if any parts of this bill makes it to the law of Texas without it being challenged as a civil rights and voting rights violation.
Right, because it's not even that something would actually happen at polling places, but just the mere word getting out that it is now legal for people to be there, and it's voter intimidation. And the history is it's Jim Crow tactics, and now we're just finding new ways to kind of pretty it up with different words that they want to try to use, or voting integrity, and these are just responsible. What's that?
Yeah, I was saying it's a sloppy game too. It's not even good. It's terrible. It's right. What are you all doing? This is you. I think Ashton Kutcher is going to jump out in the legislature because we have to be getting help. It cannot be real.
I wish that was what was happening.
I know. I was like, for a second, I thought that was going to happen. I was like, oh, this is all a punked episode? All of this? Excellent. I feel better now.
The long gag.
Send them a memo. Let's make that happen, right? Like, let's wake up from this nightmare. But, that's why we're here, though. And watching and diligent, because they can't just take our democracy just because they wake up and want to be people who don't want to do their job. I think they should find a different job if this job is too difficult for them. We need people who can solve real serious problems. We had over 200 people in Harris County alone die in a winter storm in Texas. $56 billion, almost $60 billion that are going to come from taxpayers because of legislative negligence. We've got to figure it out. This is a hot mess, and voting is not the problem. There are a lot, but voting is not the problem. We need to make it easier, and we need to protect democracy.
Yeah, and there's this long, ugly history of racism in voting, but there was one component of this that I hadn't heard before that I know is happening in Texas. I'd like to have you talk to us about it. That where prisons are located, because incarcerated persons are not eligible to vote, they are locating prisons in places and counting the incarcerated persons there instead of their home districts. So the home districts that need the money don't get it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's very wild. It's interesting. Yes, there's one thing that we're working on now called prison gerrymandering, which has to do with redistricting, which voting and redistricting are siblings, twin siblings. And redistricting for people who are incarcerated, instead of, like you say, counting them at home, where they live, where all of their official documents go, they will count them in the prisons in order to create these populations where we have in Houston alone over 2 House seats that are equivalent for the amount of persons that are going somewhere else. So those numbers are being counted in small areas that are predominantly white areas with very small amounts of people where they can barely get people to run for mayor. That's how few people. And here's the kicker. Those individuals that are being counted as voters, being counted as residents, not only does the money over 10 years from the census go to these areas to help those kids and those schools and those families, but also the votes. And there's no elections inside of a prison. They're not setting up voting booths. And if you're in there for a felony, you're not voting anyway. So that is absolutely circumvention of democracy, of voting, of gerrymandering. The purpose of it is not for them to be able to send resources to wherever, but they've circumvented to be able to do that. It's about making sure resources get to the localities where we know we have people so that we can be able to provide for the infrastructure. That's what it's for. And when they do that with voting, it's disgusting. It is disgusting for them to think that that is okay. And then to just walk around, and now the legislature, they're not even making a decision right now. They have the committee who's doing redistricting has an opportunity to be able to change this, but they're dragging their feet. They're acting as if there's a choice to make sure this is free and fair. It's 2021, and they really need to get it together, because there's some basics that we need to deal with so that we can deal with some of the larger problems that we do have in the state.
Yeah, everything that you just said, 100% and then some. We have to move on, but real quick, because we were just talking about education, and you are a proponent of educating people about democracy and civics, but Texas is about to pass a law that bans the teaching of real history in Texas. Do you talk about, about that?
Yeah. It's actually the House snuck it out overnight, so the governor probably will get this bill and be able to sign it. And people who are talking about critical race theory know nothing about critical race theory. It literally is to be able to look at the existence or the American experience from the position of people of color, in particular African Americans. For example, when there was the Great Depression, how the Great Depression impacted white families did not impact Black families who especially were in rural areas like in Mississippi, which is where it's based mostly. It didn't impact them the same way. So I remember this quote that says, when white America gets sick, Black America gets pneumonia. That's typically how it goes. And so what it does, it starts to take a lens to be able to help us understand how we can actually see problems, because you can't fix what you cannot see or what you will not acknowledge. And so it's from a theory about critical theory. So it's a very different type of thing. It's about looking at a certain percentage, 10% of anything. So it's actually off of something. But the point is that, just stop lying. It's not that serious. If we trust this generation, this Gen Z, they're different, but they are brilliant. And we've got to trust them with their own future. And we've got to do our job and stop worrying about what we're putting in their heads, because they're going to drive us to do the right things. And part of that is they want to know about the history. They want to make decisions that benefit them and their peers. And they don't think about the world like Greg Abbott thinks about the world. And they appreciate how they think about the world. And we should be happy, because a lot of work that has been done before them is why they get an opportunity to be in that type of more perfect America. And I think that bill and that notion, that mentality, it's got to go. Those people, I think they should find another job. There has to be a job somewhere, hopefully outside of America, that deals with that. But this isn't the right
far away.
Right. Yeah, I love ending on the upbeat note of what this next generation can really accomplish. These kids are incredible, and they've become politically awake and aware. So it's exciting, and I hope they continue to stay engaged. I hope they go to your website and sign up at volunteer@politichtexas.org.
Yes,
is that correct?
Some fun stuff coming up. Yeah, politichtexas.org. So if you want to get involved in Texas, especially around Juneteenth, join us.
And you have an update to your book, Get Your Weight Up, things we can all do to make America better coming out this summer. So please, everybody, check that out. Really excited to have an opportunity to read it myself. Congratulations on the update.
And thank you so much
for being, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you shed a lot of light on what's going on in Texas. And as you said once, and many people say, as goes Texas, so goes America. So we are paying attention now. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
All right, that was great. Actually, I think a lot of people learned a lot about what's going on in Texas. It's like we have to pay attention, and what we're hearing from both of our guests is the fact that, you know, legislatures are trying to sneak stuff in when we're not paying attention. That's what they're up to. So it makes me want to go for fuck's sake, which brings me to our final award nominee of the week. House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy. He hasn't been shy about being an idiot and disagreeing with who? Himself. He now opposes the bipartisan January 6th commission bill, in which he was given everything he was asked for. He's publicly beating back his own statements, but when you look a little closer, you see McCarthy's inner worm. And, you know, when asked if any members of his caucus helped coordinate the insurrection, he literally ran away from the question, just ran off the scene. It seems to be his theme now, always running away, does not want to even meet with the officer who has been trying to reach out to him for quite some time. So he is our final nominee.
Yeah, he's such an incredible disgrace and a coward. I mean, to not be willing to meet with Officer Fanone, it is a disgrace. So moving on, coming up next, we're taking back the flag from the GOP. It doesn't belong to one party. It certainly does not belong to the GOP. And being a patriot shouldn't be a word used to divide Americans. We'll share some of your wonderful stories that you've been writing in your photos. We'll share some of our stories. The GOP has tried to claim the flag, but Maya, inspired by Leslie Gore, has something to say about that, and we'll be back after this message from the Lincoln Project.
If you are fighting the American nation state, if you are fighting the values and virtues that make this country great, the conservative movement should be about nothing if not reducing your power and, if necessary, destroying you.
Be certain that none of your members were in any communication with any of the people who stormed Capitol Hill?
Thank you for the question. Everybody have a nice day.
We can look back in a time in history where people were told to wear a gold star, and they were definitely treated like second-class citizens, so much so that they were put in trains and taken to gas chambers in Nazi Germany. And this is exactly the type of abuse that Nancy Pelosi is talking about.
Have a nice day.
When they do their satanic rituals, they have to wear a mask and they have to stand 6 feet apart. Sound familiar?
Everybody have a nice day.
Check the record. Do your research.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
And to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for Trump.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome back to We're Speaking. You know, Memorial Day is this coming weekend, and it's a time for all of us to reflect on and remember the sacrifices made by our military and people who have given their lives for our democracy.
And the American flag is a big part of that remembrance. And it got us to thinking about how the right has co-opted the flag. The flag is supposed to be a symbol that unites us. Instead, they've been using it to divide us. And that got me thinking to a song by Leslie Gore. So I, together with the team, we rewrote the song. and I would love for y'all to hear it.
You don't own me. I'm not just one of your many toys. GOP don't own me. Stop using me in racist ploys. And don't play the voters for fools when it's your oath you betrayed. And I won't go to rallies with you if you're gonna act this way. You can't claim me. Don't turn me into a symbol of hate. GOP don't own me. Capitol riots you downplayed. And don't say you back the blue when it's all just hypocrisy. Co-opting our flag is abuse. This is not an autocracy. You don't own me. Not when democracy you destroy.
Maya, that is moving and sad, but it's absolutely the attitude that we need to have at this point. The flag does not belong to these people who are willing to fly it with a Confederate flag on one side and a Nazi flag on the other. That's not America. And we shouldn't have to be afraid to fly a flag for fear that people are going to think that we're not patriots.
Yeah, it's infuriating, to be honest with you. And growing up in predominantly white neighborhoods, I like to call them aggressively white neighborhoods as a kid, seeing the flag, and even during the Pledge of Allegiance, I felt like America didn't include me. Like it wasn't meant to include me. Like that's the America that I kind of grew up in. And as I've gotten older, it's like, no, my ancestors built this country too. And so this idea that the right can take this flag and try to say that only they are patriots look like this, which is what they're trying to do, and take away the one thing that we can stand behind as a symbol to bring us all together is disgusting. Like they don't own it, and they never will. It's like if they want to create their own country, make your own flag. Go live on planet GOP with your own flag. You don't get to take our flag.
Right. Yeah, and looking the way I do, I never felt I needed to question if America included me. I was never asked, like, where are you really from? Which, too many people are asked that question. And, I don't resemble the people who were really from this land. So, people like me have an extra responsibility to work so hard toward creating an America that's going to live up to the promise. We all said the Pledge of Allegiance in school over and over again when we were kids. And that last line, we kind of say the pledge and sometimes don't think that much about it. But with liberty and justice for all, that should really mean something. They shouldn't be empty words. And we've fallen so short so often in this country. We have so much potential. We have so much promise, and we are long past the time that we need to be delivering on it.
I'm so appreciative for you for saying that. And I feel like we need to say it loud and clear over and over again. We need to be louder about it. And in that vein, we asked you, our viewers, if you could help us take the flag back, to share your pictures and stories. And you had a lot of heartfelt responses, and we wanted to share them with you. First, we're tired of seeing the flag misused. Yes, share a photo. And you did.
Yes, you did. We got so many. I wish we could share all of them this evening because we got so many really amazing ones. We're gonna share some of them now, and we had them at the beginning of the show as well. But we want to go ahead and share a few with you.
Bring some of those back up. Yeah.
Yeah. So first, Alexis from Central Texas writes, my husband flew this flag over Iraq in 2005, but it represents more than the military. It's for every American, from retail workers to software engineers. We're the melting pot of cultures, and this flag unites us regardless of coast or Midwest, urban or rural, Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, I love that. It does unite us. We have more. Let's see if we can pull up another one. So I want to try to get to as many as possible. Karen, turn Iowa blue. It means my grandfather, who served in both World War II and Korea, was able to come home on the GI Bill, buy a house, and ultimately get his master's degree. It also means all of the POC men who served and were denied the benefits of the GI Bill.
The next one, Kelly Kent says, this flag was raised by my wonderful neighbor in honor of my son, who was serving as a first lieutenant in Afghanistan. He had recently been involved in a suicide attack that killed 3 of his fellow soldiers and friends. Every day I see it and remember, sorry. Remember their sacrifices for my freedom.
And Thomas Paine, the flag brings tears to my eyes. For me, it is a symbol of potential. It's poignant because of possibilities, of unity, of sacrifice, of our Constitution, democracy, and the rejection of tyranny. I fear for my country and flag.
And Mountain River Fisher adds, we'll simply say to this 94-year-old warrior, the U.S. flag means more to him than words can convey. Enlisted, age 17, World War II, U.S. Navy Amphibious Forces, Pacific Theater, called back to duty for Korea. The certificate is from Battleship New Jersey, and the flag was flown in his honor. My dad. Thank you to everybody who shared those. Yeah. Keep sharing them, please. We'd like to find other ways to use them as we are moving through the Memorial Day holiday. So please do keep submitting those to us. We're looking at all of them, and they're deeply meaningful, and we really do appreciate it.
We really do. And speaking of our democracy and the fight to save our democracy, we have a partner now, right, Lisa?
We do, yeah. Our partner organization, the Franklin Project, like Polichick, they're focused on civil engagement at really the hyper-local level, helping you organize or connect with groups in your areas to learn more about the democratic and political process and how to make your voice heard and be really effective. Start by following them on Twitter at Franklin Proj, Projus, and listen to Reed Galen speak with the 2 co-executive directors on the Lincoln Project podcast. He just had a really fantastic interview with both of them, and you can get a really deep understanding about what the Franklin Project is looking to accomplish. And their website is at franklinproject.us. You can sign their pledge, join Democracy Corps, and get involved in your community.
Yes, and I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I've listened to this particular one a couple of times because they are talking about civic education and why it is so important, and why it's something, I guess, that used to exist, and now we don't do it anymore. So it is time to bring it back, education into the fold, so we can use those critical thinking muscles. It's time. It's that time for our OFFS Awards. That was me doing that was like my award music. Our winner of our OFFS poll this week is Mitch McConnell. continuing to give alliterative names a bad name. The turtle himself, the money is drying up, and so is he. So congrats, Mitch, for being just absolutely terrible. And I don't know. I don't know, Lisa. It just seems like it's like, how low can you go? He just sets the bar so low, all the way to the floor.
Yeah, he does. And most of us thought, or an awful lot of us thought, Mitch couldn't get lower. And now, one of the things that is most infuriating about him in this moment is that he's now opposing the January 6th commission, even though he stood on the floor of the Senate and gave that impassioned speech about Trump's culpability in the insurrection and that he was responsible for it. But now we're all just supposed to pretend that that didn't happen. So Mitch, screw you. I wish you'd retire before your term is up.
Yeah, or something like that.
Or something like that. Yeah, so congrats on the award. You deserve it.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So this has been a fun show. We've got everybody with their eyes on their state legislature. So please, y'all, keep an eye on what's going on local politics. Don't forget to subscribe to our show. You can click to be notified. There's a little notification button on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, so you can be notified when we are streaming live at our new time. When is it again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And next week when you tune in, I don't know if you can hear this strange sound. This is my dog warming up his pipes because he knows we're going to talk about him in a second. But next week, tune in. We're going to be talking women in politics. And
Fezzik's going to be the co-host.
Apparently, yes. Women need a seat at the table. Not just one, we need a lot of seats at the table. So we're going to talk about women getting into politics and how to support them. And yeah, so speaking of a seat at the table or under it, Fezzik, my delightful, he really is wonderful. Fezzik is my weird rescue. He is a combination of French Mastiff, a Dog de Bordeaux, and an Australian Shepherd. And that turns out to look like this weird thing with the fat nose, but he is delightful. And, I think our pets deserve a lot of credit for enduring all of us being around so much for the past year. And you have new additions.
I do. I have bunnies, and
cute.
They're absolutely adorable.
Oh my God.
Stole my hairstyle, though. I was like, who wore it better, me or the bunny? This one, right? We have two of them. This is Sasha, Sasha Baron Cohen. Actually, we've given him a full name now, and they're the cutest, and they help. They definitely help keep us sane and help us keep things in perspective. It is so very important to keep things in perspective so that we can stay positive, because only by staying positive about everything that's going on in the world right now can we have the energy to do something about it. That is the mission of our show, to stay engaged, use our rage to stay engaged. And y'all have some pets too. You sent us pictures of your pets. So I guess we're gonna leave y'all with pet pictures. Yeah.
That's a good way to go out. Thank you for all the pet pics, everybody. Excited to see you next week. We will be back next Wednesday at 8.
Yep. See you
Bye,
then.
Pacific.
Bye.